Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Al Rosen.
Welcome to CAD 107, Introduction to 3D Printing, and our second Zoom meeting. We are going through the projects in the 3D printing project book, and we are going to review lab number 1 and lab number 2 today. I put in the main splash page, lab number 2. Let me make this a little bigger. Lab number 2 is to make this sign for your door. We're going to model the sign using CAD, AutoCAD, or SolidWorks. We really designed this course to be a little bit software independent so that people can use different softwares to 3D print. You will export the 3D model as an STL file, a stereolithography file, and then we will go over things like slicing in the Dremel software. So as a review, what we did last week, and actually before I do that, there's 2 videos for this. We have a video for how to do the exercise with AutoCAD. And so we'll draw the part, and then we'll go through and we'll model it. And then we also have a video on how to do this with SolidWorks. And again, we're using the textbook from the 20 projects to complete this task. SolidWorks is newer, SolidWorks is faster, but AutoCAD is more prevalent in the industry, at least from a standpoint of general design work. And so you can see, and it looks different too, as you start to look at how the model works. And so as we look at some of the other things here, see if I can get back to my main navigation. We also have a quiz, and it's really the review questions. It's under quizzes and exam. So one of your assignments for this week is to answer the questions from Mastering 3D Printing Chapter 1, Why Use a 3D Printer? And so Chapter 1, the book is divided into different parts, and part 1 is 3D printer hardware and software, and it's quite good. And then it goes into chapters, and chapter 1 goes through why use a 3D printer. And as we talk about 3D printing, we want to kind of get an understanding of what it's used for, and it's really driven by CAD. CAD is the tool that you use to create the objects that we then take and model, and then we bring them into our slicing software, and we are then able to use these additive manufacturing techniques. And because, like we talked about last week, it's not really printing. It's, you know, printing, 3D printing is sort of just a nice word to make people feel comfortable with the technology, but they're really CNC machines because they run on G code. And a CNC machine is a computer numerical control machine. And it's called additive manufacturing because it builds the parts up layer by layer. So as we start to learn how additive manufacturing works, we can talk a little bit or look at the history of it. This technology was created in the 80s, so it's a newer technology. There's a number of different ways to create these different models with additive manufacturing. And it talks a little bit about funding and how things got started, and then showing some of these machines versus kits. A lot of people like the Prusa kits. And then we want to look at when to use a 3D printer and some of the examples. And we have a whole shop full of these different types of machines. And so CNC machines are much faster. Laser cutters are also much faster. But these are subtractive manufacturing, meaning you have to have stock and you have to have a way to fixture those machines. All of them work on similar formats like CAD. And so what we want you to do is to go through and read the chapter on these different technologies, And then to go into the quizzes and exams, and I think Al set this up for 10 points. So here under quizzes and exams, do we have this set up so the students can see it now, Al?
Yes, please.
We have the chapter 1 review questions. And if we take a look at it, I don't know if it lets me take it because I'm not a student.
No, it just shows you what it is.
So we designed these so that you can use the internet, and it's kind of an open book, open notes kind of a thing. Here it is. And then as we look at these questions, they're built so that you can answer the question and then add files or add internet connections, I believe. And so name a type of part that could be best printed with that could be best fabricated with a 3D printer. And we could go into something that would be prototypes for, low volume. And you could also go into some of the other aspects. I tend to speak like a robot sometimes. And then if we look at 3D printers, there are only some things that can be manufactured with 3D printing. And so you're welcome to go through and add some links, things like these honeycomb type objects where you can talk a little bit about it, but don't get, really, stressed about it. What it is it's sort of a knowledge check to let us know that you understand and that you're reading the chapters in the textbook. And so that's our review questions. Getting to the assignments then, Module 1 assignment is due on the 10th. Module 1, if we go here to the content, is to basically go through and work with the technologies here. In other words, we want you to be able to open up the shield, and we want you to then be able to save it as an STL, and then we want to be able to prepare the files for printing. So we have 2 parts here, and then we have the files for those. And so if we were to look at the SolidWorks part of the shield, or if we looked at let's go with the AutoCAD one. And so I'll download that file, and this is what you'll do. Then I'll open it. And so here's my file. It was actually created on SolidWorks and then imported into AutoCAD. I can kind of manipulate it, work a little bit with the CAD system. I can then save it or export it by going to the big red A and say export, other file formats, and export this as a stereolithography file. And I'm just going to throw it on my desktop and save it. I can select the part and hit enter. And then what I'll do is I'll go to my Dremel slicing software, and I'm going to remove this part, and I'm going to open my shield. And when I did the video for this, I said that we may need to scale this, which is fine, but we would have to do a little bit of work with the shielding itself because the 3 holes that rest on it would need to be reworked. So I'm going to see if I can get this to fit without reworking it. Now, the first thing you notice is that when it comes into the slicer, it's in this configuration. So if I were to slice this with low quality and prepare it, I would need support material. And that's what this blue material is, because it doesn't print well in the air. It's called bridging. And so as we start to work with the printers, well, the first thing we want to do is to realize or to understand how to orientate the parts onto the build plate. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the part and I'm going to go to the rotate option. And I'm going to kind of get it to a view that I can see this, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm going to click off the part, and it just fits fine if I don't add a build plate adhesion to it. And so I'm going to go and say none for that. And then I'm going to prepare it. And then I would 3D print this. I would either, in the video, I was able to connect it up to the network. In the class last week, I saved it to a USB, and then I put it into the machine. So you'll turn in the STL file, and you'll turn in the CAD file. I know I already have them. It just shows me that you can do that. And then if we want to take a look at how these parts turned out, I'm going to switch over to my webcam. And so let's see here. I'm going to stop my share. Now I'm on the webcam, right, Al?
Yes, sir.
And it's pretty big, right? I think.
Yes, sir.
All right. So then let me see if I can change my view to full screen. There we go. All right. So here's our shield, and let me see if I can turn on my lighting. And so here's our shield, and oftentimes we'll have to take some of the support material off of it. And so like this part right here, okay, this would be some of the support material. Now I realize I don't have it on there. And so as I look at this, I wanted to make sure I should have orientated it with this side flat, because that way I wouldn't have these little divots of support material, just little 1, 2, 3 kind of things. If I take a look at the palette and I move the camera over to one of the machines, here's one that we printed last week. What I typically do when I start off in the morning is I'll go through and I'll purge out the material by changing the filament. And so I'll come in here and I'll load the filament and I'll purge it out. As you can see, it's starting to come out here. And it comes out like fishing line, and it's soft. You can kind of stretch it. It's hot. I'll accept the material, and then it'll go through and home the machine. You want to have some disposal near your machines because you do get a lot of strings. RFID checks the material and it tells me that we have PLA. PLA is polylactic acid, so I'll accept that. And then I'll take the part off by pushing these 2 buttons down. And we'll take a look at the part. And so the part looks like just sort of like the model. What we want to have is we want to have one of these putty knives to scrape it off. And then when you use it, push it away from the body. You know, a lot of the kids never had shop class, and I used to be a high school shop class teacher. So safety is always a big thing, and working with tools is. And so you want to, you know, make sure that this is. And then you want to be able to take a look at it. And so as we look at it, we can see that the part has sort of these ridges. And then here's the build plate adhesion material. And it just peels off really quite nicely. The bottom of it didn't really turn out so nice. Usually you get a nice glass type finish, but that's because they have these kind of raised grip marks. And so then we will have these parts available for you guys to pick them up, and you can pick them up. One of the other things that we did was we went through how to brand the parts. And so we can brand the parts by going back. I'm going to stop my share. or I'll start a share. So if I wanted to brand my parts, what I can do is in the exercise, we have this dairy door opener. And I remember I have it in the downloads. And so, well, let me just do it again. We'll download it. And we'll open it. And it opens on my computer in 3D Builder. And so 3D Builder allows you to do some of these other things. And so what I'm able to do here is okay it. Whoops. Try that again. There it is. So we can say, okay, work in millimeters. I'm going to pause the video while this is going. So in 3D Builder, we can go through and add our name to it. And so if I click on the object, and then I go to Insert, and let's see here. I want to go to Emboss. And so you can emboss your name on these parts, provided it doesn't get too big. And then I can say, okay, check mark. And so if you want to emboss your parts when you turn them in, that will help out a great deal. There's other ways to do it in CAD, but this is by far the easiest way. And so that's a little bit of a review on our first project. Our first project was to open the files with CAD, and then to take those files into the slicing software and to understand how to part. Then look at the save the file and turn those files in. So once we have parts, we'll print them and then we make them available for pickup over in the lab room P130. To recap our first assignment, I'm going to stop the video and then we're going to open things up for questions and we'll go into our next lab.